So the Derby is right around the corner, which means you'll be hearing a lot about the horses, jockeys, and trainers all next week on CN2 Sports. But tonight, we're going to tell you about an event that will let you mingle with some of the biggest names in horse racing. Kaiten Brader joins me to talk about the Derby preview at the Crown Plaza. Now, Kaiten, so glad to have you on the show again. You've worked with basically everyone in the business. You're an expert on horses. You grew up around them. You changed venues this year for the Derby preview. How exciting is that, and what can people expect?
Well, previously we had been in a restaurant, and it had become kind of a tradition over the years for the Derby trainers to kick off their week in kind of a relaxing fashion to get to talk to fans, but still kind of talk to each other too. Now, we've moved from the restaurant to the Crown Plaza, which is going to enable us to have a bigger crowd. It's going to be just a superb setting for the same type of relaxed, great atmosphere that we've had in the past. We're going to have folks from Woodford Reserve there. We're going to have folks from both the Oaks and the Derby field represented, and it really is an opportunity before everything gets extremely intense for the trainers and the owners and the jockeys to just relax and have a good time.
Now, I know I'm going to the event, and I'm very excited because it will be my very first time. Who can people expect to see there? I know you say jockeys, trainers, owners, but who are some of the big names that people can expect?
In the past, we've had regular appearances every year from Bob Baffert. He's still trying to figure out which of his horses are going to run in the Derby this year. He had a number that were kind of on the fence. They've been training here at Churchill, but we're going to find out a little more. But the one I'm most excited about, the first time I've seen him at the Derby preview, is Wayne Lukas. And this is the first time we've seen Wayne Lukas back in the Derby in several years with a real live contender. In fact, he's got two contenders. Will take charge in Oxbow. He'll be there, and he's kind of legendary in terms of the Triple Crown as well as Churchill Downs. Gary Stevens might be there. He's riding Oxbow for Wayne Lukas. He came out of retirement, Hall of Fame jockey. So that's just a little sampling of some of the people.
Now, as far as the actual races, I know a lot of people look to you for information because you are an expert in that area. Do you have any standouts right now for the Oaks and the Derby, and maybe people can start to look at those horses?
Well, you don't make up your mind until the very last minute, that's for sure. And if we had all the winners, we really wouldn't have to do anything. We could just sit back and pick the horses, and that life would be easy. But I will say that this year there seems to be kind of two categories of horses. Horses that are just sort of contenders and horses that really have emerged at the top of the class. And in the Derby, that would be Orb, a horse who won the Florida Derby for Shug McGahee, a Hall of Fame trainer who's from Kentucky, but he has never won the Derby, and he's had very few starters, actually. He said he wouldn't come unless he had a horse that could take him there. And Shug actually will be at the Woodford Reserve preview dinner, too. The other contender is Verrazano, I think, at the top of the class. And those two horses are going to vie for favoritism. And right now, I haven't seen anything to dissuade me from one of those two horses as my pick for the Derby, but I'm going to kind of wait until we get a little closer to really divide those two. Then when we get into some of the second-tier horses, It's My Lucky Day is a horse that hasn't even gotten here yet, but has been right on the fringe of competing and beating against the best horses. He was second in the Florida Derby. I think he's a big contender at a big price. And the fillies, just as contentious as the Derby this year. Really some very, very nice fillies, but the favorite is going to be Dreaming of Julia. She beat all the girls so far that she's met on the East Coast, and she did it in South Florida by about 20 lengths. So she's a very dynamic performer, and she's trained exceptionally well.
Now, I know a lot of people in Louisville have a special attachment to Golden Sense. Could you talk a little bit about that horse? Does it have a chance?
Well, you know, if you'd asked me in January, I'd have said absolutely no way. Somebody said, could Rick Pitino win the NCAA championship and also the Kentucky Derby? And I said, you would have to give me 100 to 1 to see that happen. Well, he's halfway there, and he's got a horse that qualified for the Derby and comes off a big win in California. That's Golden Sense. So what's interesting is Rick Pitino only owns a small piece of the horse, about 5%, but he represents, as far as the rooting section, with all the people that come along with him and what it would mean to see the coach come up with a win in the Derby. It's just, he's going to drive his own odds down. That horse is probably going to be one of the top favorites. I would say he's going to vie with Orb and Verrazano very closely in the wagering.
Now, for people that are trying to look past just looking at the names, what advice can you give them when they're watching horses maybe in the paddock or trying to look at them when they run this week? What special things do you look for in a horse?
Well, the big thing is to trust your instincts, because it's just like people. Sometimes your first impression is your best impression. And the other thing I always tell people is not to get too caught up in listening to all the experts, because again, we're just like everybody else taking it all in. But you do want to see a horse that looks happy out on the track, and no, they're not smiling, but their ears are forward, their coat is healthy, and they just look as if they're enjoying what they're doing out on the track. Rarely do you see a horse who's not performing well in the morning, who's not kind of enjoying his work, that runs well. And they will school in the afternoon practice in the paddock, so you get a chance to see them if you're out at the track in the days leading up to the big races. And sometimes you just see something that strikes you. And again, it is a lot like people. There's just something about first impressions. So trust your first impressions. I never talk anybody out of a long shot.
Well, thank you so much, Kate. And we always love having you on. And hopefully I can take some of your advice this year and pick out a winner myself. Tickets are still available for the event, which takes place Monday night at the Crowne Plaza from 5 to 9 p.m. Call Paige with the Backside Learning Center at 502-634-6543 to make your reservation.